Hello and welcome. We have an important topic tonight. We're talking about American-Islamic relations. And with me is the new Executive Director of CARE, which is the Council on American-Islamic Relations. Jailani Hussein is here. And I was so intrigued reading about your life. I want to ask you some follow-up questions, but just to give you folks a little thumbnail sketch, you came to America as a 10-year-old, 1993. You have your BA degree from St. Cloud and NDSU, and in political science, community development, city planning. So this job is a nice match with your education. And you're pursuing a law degree.
Yes.
What school?
I'll be in, hopefully, Hamlin.
Okay. They've gotten some great recognition with that program. You're also on the board, and this is an organization I've not heard much about, but it sounds so important, with the American Relief Agency for the Horn of Africa. And with that position, you've gone to the Horn and done some real project-oriented work related to the famine.
Absolutely.
And so that's something I'd love to ask you more about, too. One of the neat things is that you got a wonderful award called the Visionary Leadership Award from the Minnesota Council on Nonprofits. Yeah. That must have been a great shot in the arm.
Yes, absolutely. Being called a visionary is itself a feat.
Yes, I mean it's the kind of thing that I think when you're in nonprofit work, those kind of recognition things give you energy, don't
Absolutely.
you feel?
I mean, when you're being recognized by the largest nonprofit network in Minnesota, the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, and it's really an honor. And obviously, I'm not the only visionary. There's tremendous visionaries in the nonprofit sector here in Minnesota doing great work, and I'm just happy to be recognized for that award. Yeah.
Your family back in Somalia, are they duly impressed, do you think? With
a lot of people are, absolutely, absolutely. And here and obviously also abroad. Yeah.
Yes, it's a great honor. I want to talk more about CARE later on, but just give us, for those who aren't really tuned in or aren't aware of all the mission statements, tell us the focus of CARE, the broad focus, and then we'll come back to that later.
Yeah, so CARE is the Council of American-Islamic Relations. It's really a civil rights organization, a little more similar to the NAACP. It really focuses on three areas. One, to educate people about Islam and Muslims. And in this time, we've become a very important organization addressing those issues. And second, to empower American Muslims, let them understand what their rights are. And then thirdly, to actually deal with civil rights cases. So on an average, each year we average about 200 civil rights cases. And some of those cases involve large number of people, some with just one individual. And so our tiny little office with few lawyers, we are able to handle a lot of cases. And that also tells you that our work is much needed and also very important. So those are the three areas that we technically focus on. We always believe in education and empowerment and building the bridges between the American Muslim community and its larger American community. And we've noticed how important that is. So we've noticed almost 80% of our cases are resolved through education. And the problem was because of lack of understanding.
Having to go all the way to court.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so a lot of our cases come from employment discrimination or also employers not able to accommodate for religious accommodations. And so we noticed that when we educate the employer, we're able to get a settlement for the employee, we're able to offer that opportunity for the employee to return to their work, and educate the employer as well. And a lot of times employers are very happy to do that because they're, sometimes the employees are good employees. They just wanted, some sort of a time for them to pray or a space for them to pray or things within their religion.
Information is power, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so we believe in the business of preventing, and one of the ways we try to encourage employers or anyone out there who's listening, if you want to know more about Islam and Muslims, we do provide training and opportunities for large employers, small employers as well. And that's a good way to get to know a lot of your newer employees who are coming from Muslim countries.
And a lot of Muslims, as you were telling me earlier, Jelani, don't come from abroad. They grew up here.
Absolutely.
And what was it, 60%?
Yeah, so that's one of actually questions that we ask in our training. What's the percentage you think of Muslims in the United States actually are born in the United States? And it's actually over 60% and growing. And one of the interesting things is that since September 11 and until now, we've noticed there's a shift in the narrative of with the identity of the American Muslim population. And Americans often forget the reality that Muslims were here long time ago. It's actually been stated that about 2/3 or 1/3 of all African Americans are Muslims. And interesting enough, a lot of people know Alex Haley's book, The Roots.
Right.
So Kunta Kinte was, in the story, Muslim. And also the fact of the matter that one of the interesting, actually, stories about the U.S. Constitution and even the fact of actually the forming of the United States, the independence of the United States. The first country to recognize the independence of the United States was a Muslim country. Morocco was the first country to recognize the existence of America. Yeah.
Facts I had not learned in history.
So, and actually, interesting enough, recently we just found out through some documents, a professor wrote an article talking about the first president to be accused of being a Muslim was actually Thomas Jefferson. And the reason why is because he actually had a copy of the Quran that our local congressman, Keith Ellison, when he became the first U.S. elected congressman to the United States, he used Jefferson's Quran to swear on. And so America has always had a long history with Muslims.
But as you said, the narrative is kind of, there's an attempt to rewrite it.
Yes.
I think that was your quote, right?
Yeah, I think there is an attempt to rewrite it, and a lot of it is based on a growing fear of Islam, and that is being perpetuated not by just thought; it's actually being perpetuated by organizations. So,
and why do you think? Is it 9/11? Is that?
I think we were noticing that it's actually much more. It's increasing much more rapidly recently than post September 11. You would expect that right after post-September 11, you would see a huge backlash against Muslims, and Muslims would have a very difficult time. There was obviously backlash, but not to the level that we see today. We've had,
so it's gotten worse.
It's gotten really worse in the last, I would say, 18 to 24 months in the United States. And partly what we noticed is that there are actually organizations that their goal is to misinform people about Islam and Muslims. So we have a website called Islamophobia.org, and if you go there, you'll find out organizations who are funded in the millions, over 100 million, almost in a yearly or biannually, who go out into communities misinforming individuals about Islam and Muslim, and that starts to build on a great deal of ignorance that already exists about Muslims in the United States.
Can you tell us some names of some groups that
I think like Act for
funding?
America is well known. It's an organization led by Bridget Gabriel. She goes out and speaks to that. There's many organizations who their aim is to pretty much present a picture of Islam that does not really exist, and in a way to benefit from the ignorance that exists in most American communities about Muslims.
So this is going beyond the fear element.
Absolutely.
We've learned, I think, that sometimes when people are different, look different, have different habits, there's some natural fear.
Yep.
But this is deliberate sounding and very different from a natural.
Absolutely. I mean, we always fear change. I mean, Minnesotans fear the cheeseheads, right? Well, we all have fears of all kinds. But the
good
reality,
and bad change
good and bad,
causes fear.
Yeah, obviously,
right?
obviously, what we don't know, we often sometimes have fear of. But when someone comes to you and tells you of a story that doesn't exist, and there's no way for you to fact check it, or you don't want to even fact check it. And then now all of a sudden you start to act on that, wrong information. It creates a problem. I mean, we had a tragedy actually in North Carolina. 3 young Muslims were killed by an individual who we believe got misinformation about Islam and Muslims. Here in Minnesota, we had a lady who pulled a rifle on a Muslim family in Maple Grove in the middle of the night, asking them to get out of the car. Eventually she was charged. It turned out to be a BB gun, but it was a rifle, and for that family it was a very scary moment. Couple in their 50s actually.
I think I read about this case. They had gone to this home to pick up their son, who was a teenager or young teen, and the woman was a watch or neighborhood watch. That's what she said. She wasn't a neighborhood watch, but she acted. Even if she was, I mean, they were just waiting for their boy, right?
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that they thought they were going to be shot there. It's interesting, they're a couple in their 50s, driving a nice car, waiting for their children, or for their son in this case, to be seen as through the eyes of suspect. That has to be something that individual did not just pick up. I mean, and so I think we are learning now that there is consequences when you do have organizations that are receiving millions and going and have large audiences and spewing this hate and hate, bigotry, and even misinformation to our community. And then that creates a great deal of anxiety and fear of literally the unknown, but now fear of a community that is thriving well and is part of our history here in America. One thing I remember talking to this young woman. She's not young, she's an older woman, but I would say young woman. She was asking me tough questions about Islam and Muslims, and obviously she was misinformed, but we were having a conversation, and that's one thing we encourage in CARE, and to have a dialogue. And through that conversation, I told her, I said, do you like ice cream cones? And she said, yeah, I like ice cream cones. I said, well, be happy that actually it's an invention that was made in the United States. She was happy, and then I said, well, the invention was actually made by an American Muslim in a St. Louis fair, I believe, in the early 1900s. So today's ice cream cone is literally an invention by an American Muslim. And so, this idea that, we hate each other, we are a society that has all kinds of faith, all kinds of groups, and we're living together. And I've always looked at America to be one of the greatest experiments in the world, because we have such a diverse population, people who come from all backgrounds, all parts of the world, who identify themselves as Americans. That's a very powerful message to send and reflect back to the world. You can't find the image of America anywhere else outside of this country, which creates the challenge that we have to get along. We have to learn about each other. We have to challenge each other to understand the beauty within our faiths, the beauty within our cultures. And I think that's how we build a very resilient and a prosperous society.
Why do you think, though, that there is more discrimination, more fear-mongering now than there was back? I mean, is it these groups that have taken this charge, trying to cause trouble?
I think it's a couple of things. I think first, yes, obviously there's groups out there spreading misinformation. Second thing is, if you look at the world today, you will probably find that, since probably the Cold War, there's been more conflict in Muslim countries than anywhere else, or Muslim majority countries than anywhere else. So a lot of these conflicts come to our doorstep, whether we are engaged there like Iraq and Afghanistan and other places like where I came from in Somalia. And so a lot of these conflicts breed a message of war. And a lot of people see that message to be a representation of people's faith and that's not the case. I mean, I've been raised here in Minnesota. I believe I'm more Minnesotan than anywhere else. I go out hunting in the winter. I root for the. I mean, I believe. I mean, I've definitely added to the American culture and to the Minnesota culture. But even though where I came from is very cold. It was very warm, I'm saying, in Somalia. Living in Minnesota is complete opposite, but still, it's interesting. But I'm taking it in
as your home,
and actually, I don't, a lot of, we all, get excited for the summer, but I also get excited for the winter a little bit.
That's a little bit,
yeah. Well, not as much as the winter and the summer.
Who are Nordic people, maybe their grandparents, and they grew up here, also don't like winter. So.
Yes.
I want to ask Ben Carson, presidential candidate, speaking out as he did recently. Did that just, how did you feel, and what did CARE do as an official response?
We've asked them to step down.
In an official,
yeah. We request them to withdraw from the race. And the reason why, politicians make comments. They make a lot of exaggerated comments, and oftentimes they appeal to a specific population that is, whether they're following or but I think Ben Carson, because even Donald Trump made did not respond to a man who said, Muslims are the problem, and the president is Muslim. Obviously, Barack Hussein Obama. The only thing I share with him is his last name, but he's not a Muslim. But the reality is that we're noticing that with Ben Carson's statement, it had nothing to do, even if it's offensive, obviously, to a Muslim youth or a teenager, but it's against the Constitution. So he spoke in a way of pretty much changing the Constitution. And that is, I think, for a presidential candidate, not to know the Constitution, that he's going to defend and honor and stand behind.
And a smart man. I mean, a neurosurgeon.
Yeah, and for him to have a bigoted statement that also oversteps the U.S. Constitution is not something that we want a president to even dance around.
Now, it does seem that that statement has taken its toll on the energy that was going into his
obviously, but he's made many other blunders, and I think we're noticing that. Even I just heard recently Rand Paul mention, he said, we're not talking about politics, we're talking about this back and forth responses about how their appearances. I mean, it seems to be we are, America's, we lead in democracy, and when we hear our politicians fighting about how we look and how a community is represented, and the fact that young American Muslim kid cannot become a president of the United States. And it was interesting, actually, we had a young local kid, a Somali kid here named Yusuf Daryur, who put a YouTube response to Mr. Ben Carson. Very good. And he challenged Ben Carson. He told him, I'll run and I'll be the first Muslim president. So, and then he added, he said, I'll allow everybody and I will be a welcoming, and so I think the fear that exists now is based on the conflicts, obviously, and it's based on these groups really mobilizing and spreading fear. But I challenge our Minnesota community. I really do. We have a very vibrant Muslim community here in Minnesota. Minnesota is a first for a lot. We have the first Muslim congressman. That's a great honor for the state. We have a very, a large, robust Muslim community here. We have a lot of the doctors in the state are Muslim. A lot of the IT and in the IT field are Muslim, and so and your cab drivers, Muslims are part of this great state and part of this great nation. And I challenge you to have a conversation. I know in the Midwest we struggle with having tough conversations, especially in Minnesota. We have a little way of dealing with tough conversations. But I think if you have a conversation with a Muslim today, you will realize that they have the same growing pains as you do. They're paying their bills. They're challenged by the weather just like everybody else. And they don't want to be called out or singled out and labeled as a community of suspects.
One of the good things I thought that came out of the Carson problem was that, I don't know if it was a group you're associated with, but some groups said, let us send you the Quran. And
yes.
as a free, if anyone would like.
Actually, it was CARE. CARE offered for all. And the offer still stands that you can contact CARE National.
I thought that was a great idea. I mean, I don't know how you can fund that, but I would hope a lot of people would take you up on it.
Yeah, as long as they pay for the shipping and handling, they'll give them a copy of the Quran, and it has both the Arabic and the English, and it has also relevant information about the verses in the Quran. And I always encourage other people to read for their own and to discover on their own, and visit your local mosque near you.
There's so many principles that are so similar. similar, stated just a little
absolutely. It's
differently.
Abrahamic faiths. I mean, that's a lot of people don't understand. You know, Christians and Muslims and Jews have a very similar doctrine. I mean, the differences are very small when it comes to that. It's always surprising when I tell Christians that there's a whole chapter in the Quran dedicated for Mary. And it talks about her story. And in Islam, it confirms a lot of the stories that are in the Bible. And then there's some other things that the Quran also mentions. So including actually one of the miracles that the Quran talks about is the fact that at the time when Jesus was a baby, that he spoke out of the cradle in defense of his mother. So that's one of the miracles that the Quran talks about in respect to his birth. And so I encourage people to learn more, and I think that's the American spirit, that we have been welcoming people on Ellis Island for a long period of time, and we fear them. I mean, there has been a religious intolerance in this country for a long time. I mean, there's
every group that comes is put through.
Absolutely,
the
Catholics,
the Irish,
Irish,
the Polish,
the Polish, the Jews. And one of the interesting things, the way we overcome and the way historically we overcame these fears and these, it was not because of the Muslim community or the Catholic community accepted or spoke louder or clarified things. No. It was when other people who were not Catholic, other people who were not the Irish, got to know them and also yelled from the top, mountaintops and said, these people are my neighbors. These people belong here as much as I belong here.
So that's what you're hoping for and working toward.
Absolutely.
Right?
So I encourage other people to speak up. And there has been a lot, especially in our airwaves, where people are speaking ill about Muslims and they're coming to destroy us. And Muslims have been here from the inception of this country. I mean, now obviously the population has increased, but the reality is Muslims have always been here.
As a parent, and you've got two little kids, does it pain you tremendously not just as a parent, of course, with your life and work, but does it really, is that the hardest part for a Muslim couple that have children?
Yeah, actually, I don't have kids yet, but I would.
Oh, you don't?
No, not yet.
Oh,
but
I somehow thought you did.
Yeah, I am married though. I'm married to a beautiful woman that supports me every single day, even though I deal with one of the most challenging, work.
Yes.
But
I had misinformation.
Oh no, it's okay. Hopefully, I'll have 2 kids soon. Obviously, one of the interesting things that that I think you mentioned is, yes, a lot of Muslims who they fear for their kids.
Right.
And when they hear the President of the United States saying, by the way, you, sitting in that couch, because you're a Muslim, you cannot be a President of the United States. You cannot participate in a democracy. You can't sit at the table like everybody else. And these similar statements were made about John F. Kennedy and the Catholics and before. And so I think the challenge is when we see hatred and injustice and bigotry and bullying in schools or now.
That's another one of your tasks, isn't it?
We need everyone in that room to step forward and to say that's not the case. And we've seen that. And I give you an example here in the Twin Cities. A school board member in Columbia Heights made a very
recently, this month, right?
Yes, this month made some statements about Muslims that were bigotry based. One thing.
Was that on Facebook?
Yes, he made a post on Facebook. And
is he not denying that he did that?
Yeah, he has denied it, but we have the school board chairman saying that he admitted to him over the phone.
Oh, okay.
And the school board chairman has nothing to hide. So obviously he made the statements. He just doesn't want to own them out to it. But the interesting or the silver lining about that story is, and I've lived in Columbia Heights for 20 years, is that community came together. Teachers,
yes, I read that,
parents, students.
And said, we're not going to tolerate
We're not going to accept that. We're not going to accept that. And that is a picture of America that I really love about. I love the fact that our community came together for the Muslims and said, we stand behind this community. Absolutely. And I think that's what America needs now is for Americans of all walks of life, from all backgrounds, to say Muslims are part of this community and they will be part of this community.
Sometimes when things get worse, that's when change occurs.
Yep.
We're getting the signal. We want to give people some information so that if you want to learn more about CARE. You can go to their website. It's www.cairmn.org. And then we haven't gotten a lot of time to talk about Islamophobia, but there is a website, and I think you'll find it very interesting. And you just go to www.islamophobia.org. Well, we've got just about 2 minutes left. What would you emphasize that we can do as non-Muslims, we, myself, others who are non-Muslims, what can we do to help the situation right now with?
I think, especially here in Minnesota, we have a very welcoming community. Minnesota has been very welcoming, and in the last, I would say, 50 years, we've seen a large increase of immigrants. So Minnesota is changing, and it has this diversity that is going to reflect the state in a new way. And I think we all need an opportunity to really have a dialogue, to have conversation.
So to keep talking.
Keep talking.
Get to know your neighbors.
Absolutely. And if we have challenges, we need to talk them through it. We have to be able to speak them through.
Be cautious.
And I would say the last point I would say is don't listen to the snake oil salesmen out there who are coming to communities across Minnesota saying, oh, by the way, I have the story about Islam and Muslims, while you have hundreds of thousands living here in this Minnesota.
That's wise words.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Jelani,
you. Thank you, Mary, for
coming
having me.
down. It's been way too short of a time, but very, very good dialogue. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back again, or I'll be back again next week. Until then, have a good week.